Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Trying some new technology here, a new camera setup so that I can talk to you through my nice camera rather than a GoPro, basically. We'll see how it goes. Working with some NDI and seeing if I can get everything routed through the internet, so to speak. Um, we've got a great show for you this morning. Welcome to another fine Wednesday morning here in the city of Philadelphia. Welcome to another coffee break chat. I'm your host, James Jackson, he, they pronouns, executive producer, Light Thief Productions. Sorry for the raspiness of my voice. It is it is a holdover from last week, and the reason why we didn't have a show last week. I you know, have had some sort of weird cold thing, and don't know what exactly it was or is, and ended up just not being able to speak. So last week you couldn't hear me at all. This week at least you can sort of hear me, so that's good. Um, let's see. This morning we have for you. Let me pull that up. Can't take the smell, can't take the noise. Got no money to move out. I guess I got no choice. Philly mayoral's race. Judicial corruption. Center City, remarkably safe, and Chester. We'll talk about all those things. But first, we've got our special guests. We've got Conrad Benner, excuse me. We've got Russ and Aaron. And we've got information on the Front Street Walls project, and we've got information on the Book of Wills. Let me get those folks up on screen for you. Having a little tiny bit of hard time here for some reason with one of our guests not showing up. One moment, please. Let's try that. Nope. All right. Well, let's get two of you guys up, and then I will work on the third as you introduce yourselves. Conrad, let's start with you. Please introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do.
Hi, yeah, my name is Conrad Benner. I use he, him pronouns. And yeah, I'm a Philly-based blogger and just like a lover of the arts in our public space here in Philadelphia. 12 years ago, I started a blog called Streets Department that highlights and celebrates art and our public space. And in addition to running a blog that explores themes and ideas and artworks in our public space, Streets Department also has a podcast, and we do some curatorial work too. You mentioned Front Street Walls. That's one of our latest projects that we're doing in the Fishtown neighborhood that we can talk about after introductions. But thank you for having me.
Thank you. And let's see. Russ, if you would introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do.
Yes, hi, it's Russ Walsh, and it's he, him. I'm a Philadelphia-based actor. Been acting in and around Philadelphia for many years, usually playing ne'er-do-wells, angry fathers, drunks, those kinds of parts. And I also am a blogger, but I blog on the Philadelphia Phillies because a few passions in my life. One is acting, another one is baseball. So I blog about the history of the Philadelphia Phillies. But here today to talk about our upcoming production of the Book of Will by Lauren Gunderson, which is being produced by Fever Dream Repertory at the second stage of Adrian Theater on Sansom Street.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And Aaron, if you could introduce yourself, let me see if I can get you on screen, at least for your introduction, and then we will go from there. 1 second, please. Let's try that. Huh. I am having a weird problem this morning. Okay. So not able to bring you up, but you can go ahead and speak and let me try and get you up on screen.
Okay. My name is Aaron Wexler. My pronouns are he, him. And I am an actor in the Philly and surrounding area regions for the past 30 years or so, specializing in Shakespeare, I would say. And I'm also appearing in the Book of Will with Russ, and he already gave all the relevant information.
Awesome. Thanks so much. We have Penny, but Penny is unable to join us via audio or video. So if you guys would tell us a little bit about Book of Will and give us a brief overview of what Book of Will is. I noticed from the promotional poster that it is about William Shakespeare, I assume.
Yes, it is. It is about William Shakespeare, and even though Shakespeare does not appear in the play, Shakespeare has been dead for 3 years at the time of the play. So we're looking at 1623. Henry Condell, the character I play, and John Hemmings, the character Aaron plays, are attempting to put together what became known as the first folio, the first book collection of William Shakespeare's plays, and the story is the story of how these two gentlemen, along with their wives, their children, and some other characters, printers, and so forth, in 1623 in London, put together the first folio of William Shakespeare's plays, which is basically the book off of which all of the Shakespeare productions that have been performed over the hundreds of years since then are based.
And these two guys, Condell and Hemmings, they aren't just random guys. They were members of the King's Men, which was Shakespeare's troupe at the time. They were good friends with William Shakespeare.
Awesome. What can people expect to see when they go to see Book of Will?
I think maybe the description we just gave might sound a little dry. So I think the first thing I would say is it's damn funny. Okay,
Very funny.
It is a very funny play. All the machinations that these two guys have to go through to make this happen are told in a very humorous way.
And the language is like contemporary, modern language. You get some Shakespeare in there, but it is a very contemporary play. It's not like classical theater.
Yeah, the characters talk as Aaron said, in the contemporaneous manner, but they also sprinkle in some of the best known lines from Shakespeare. So I like to think that Shakespeare nerds will get a lot out of it, and the any traditional theater goer will get a lot out of it too, because it is a highly entertaining play. I think it's also good to point out that even though the two central characters are two actors from the King's Men, from Shakespeare's troupe, again, Henry Condell and John Hemmings, the author has made a very strong attempt to include a lot of strong women characters also. Our two wives in the play also have very strong roles to play in putting together the first folio, as does John's daughter Alice. So it's got a little bit of something for everybody. While it's laugh out loud funny, it's also very serious and very rooted in the time of 1623, and death comes into play. The most famous actor from the King's Men, Richard Burbage, makes an appearance in the play, and his death is one of the things that spurs the men to try to collect the plays and get this folio made.
Yeah, it's hilariously funny, but it's also very poignant. Like the old adage of "you'll laugh, you'll cry" could definitely be applied to this one.
Excellent. What would you where can people see the show? Where is it available? When is it available? Where are tickets?
So tickets are available at Fever Dream Rep, and if you just go to their website, you can get tickets right away. So we officially open on Saturday, this Saturday, which is April 22nd, I believe, and we open at 8 o'clock in the evening at the Adrian. There is a performance on Friday night, which is a preview performance, a pay what you will performance, and then we run for 3 weekends: Thursday, Friday, Saturday matinees, and Saturday evenings, and a Sunday matinee for the following 2 weekends at the Adrian Theater, which is at 20th and Sansom Street, and it's on the second stage at the Adrian. Just as a Philadelphia actor, this is my first opportunity to act at the Adrian. I've seen dozens of shows at the Adrian over the years. It's a terrific venue, and a place I've always wanted to perform in. So that's one of the perks that I get out of performing in this play. So Adrian Theater, Fever Dream Repertory, and if you just type in Fever Dream Rep, you'll be able to find tickets.
Great. And any tips for folks wanting to see it? Anything that they need to consider? Masking, attendance dates that they might want to prefer, any accessibility options for folks.
I was going to let Aaron handle that, but
No, I can do that. There it is handicap accessible. There's an elevator that travels to this second story where our theater is. And in terms of what would be the best time to go, I mean, whatever your preference is, but I will say that Saturday is opening night, and we definitely have a lot of tickets left for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would recommend trying to get tickets for that night to make sure that you can get tickets.
And masking is optional.
Awesome.
It's up to you.
Yeah, I've been masking in person with people just because I don't want to give anybody what I've got. So, well,
that's a good choice. It makes sense if you're not feeling well to mask in consideration of everybody else. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's transition momentarily to Conrad. Conrad, welcome. Please introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do again, and then let's talk about your new project, the Front Street Walls project.
Wait, can I ask Russ a question first? Russ, I feel like there's either a ton or no overlap with baseball fans and theater people. Like, can you talk about that? Like, is there an overlap or is there none? Are you alone?
Well, I'm not alone because many of my actor friends have gone with me to ball games. I would say that my particular obsession is probably a little extreme. The history of it. I mean, I'm one of the few actors I know that was alive for the 1950 pennant as well as the subsequent one. So long-suffering Phillies fan. But yeah, no, I don't think there's lots of Phillies fans. As a matter of fact, lots of Phillies fans in this particular cast. So
well, I guess baseball is theater in a way, right?
Well, absolutely it is. I think if I'm a junkie for anything, I'm a junkie for live performance. Okay, and so baseball is live performance, and theater is live performance, and that is, the live-through experience. I enjoy the live-through experience of the game and of the drama.
You just gave me like a new neuro pathway. So I work in the arts and I'm an art blogger, and it always bums me out. I didn't grow up. So my name is Conrad, and I run a blog called Streets Apartment. I use he, him pronouns. And I grew up in Philly. I grew up in Fishtown. I went to Central High School. Then I got kicked out of Central High School, graduated from Abington. And at various points of my education, there was some art education, but there really wasn't a ton. And even though I grew up in Philadelphia and we have an enormous array of arts institutions, like I didn't really go to the PMA or the Barnes, which when I was growing up was further away. And there is this wall between people in the arts here in Philadelphia, or people just in the arts in general. So I love this idea that you just put in my head of like, anyone who likes baseball will probably also like theater. And it's just like explaining to them to come out, like go see it. Because if you like the drama of baseball, you will like the drama or the entertainment of some of these other live performances. That's so interesting. I'm going to hold on to that. And James, okay, I introduced myself, and then what was the question?
So tell us about Front Street.
Oh yeah, so like I mentioned a couple of times, I grew up in Fishtown, and for a number of years in the 2010s, there was a project there called Front Street Walls. It was organized by Honey Grow, which was a Philly-based company, like a fast casual restaurant, and they had new headquarters in Fishtown at Front Street, right around Columbia, and they're in this former warehouse where like cars and trucks would kind of go in and out, but because they didn't need that anymore, they covered up those walls. And so the building is a brick building, but where those docking bays were covered up became this like this material that would be perfect for murals, stucco. Okay. And so they organized with local artists to do rotating artworks there. And they did it for a couple of years. But then for one reason or another, I'm actually not sure the history, they moved out of that building and out of Fishtown. And a new owner moved in right around the time of the beginning of COVID. And, so things have been on hold. The murals that were there that were meant to rotate kind of more frequently haven't rotated since 2018. So last May, actually, I tweeted at the new owners and I said, hey, if you ever want to bring that project back, like I'd love to work with you on it. I grew up in the neighborhood. I love murals. And the interesting thing about these Front Street Walls murals is they're really the perfect size for up and coming artists. So if you're an artist who maybe has been doing street art for a couple of years, or you've been in school for a couple of years, or you've been in gallery shows, but you haven't yet created a big mural, the size of these Front Street Walls murals, which are roughly like 15 feet wide by 20 feet tall, maybe a bit taller, are the perfect size for your first mural. And so they love the idea. So they said yes. And then to find funding, we went to Mural Arts Philadelphia. They love the idea as well. They helped funded it. And over the last year, we've been kind of organizing how we would roll this out. And we just rolled it out about a month ago. We had an open call for artists. And to my delight and surprise, we had 327 local artists apply to be a part of this project. Unfortunately, we only have 4 little bays to do murals in. I wish we had 300, but so we've selected those 4 artists. We haven't announced them yet, but we'll be announcing them soon, and they will be painting in June. The great thing about what Mural Arts and Cook and Solo, the new wall owners, are doing is they're going to fund this annually. So we're going to do temporary murals every June with 4 new artists in these 4 like previous parking bays. We're really excited. Yeah, we're going to highlight local artists, highlight artists who've never had the opportunity to create a mural of their own before, and it's going to be a big celebration. We're really excited.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for that overview. For those that don't know, what brought you to doing murals and working with mural arts so much in the city of Philadelphia?
Yeah, so I mean, I worked at a coffee shop in my 20s and had no plans to be a part of the art world. And then I got hit by a van at 6th and Spring Garden when I was biking to work one day, broke my leg, went through this like months bout of depression, not knowing what to do with my life. And at 24, I decided to go to community college. I had not gone to college previously, and stop biking because I didn't want to get hit again. So on walking from Fishtown to community college to, at that time, I was still working at Cappuccino Gelato on 13th and Sansom Street, just walking a lot. And a boyfriend I had at the time gave me a point and shoot camera for Christmas one year because he thought I liked photography, and he was right. So I ended up taking photographs mostly of street art and architecture. So about a year later, I thought I wanted to start a photo blog. Blogs were still relatively new. And I had the great advice from a friend named Louisa while we were out drinking one night. I think we were at El Bar. And she goes, if you're going to start a photo blog, like have a specific theme, like have a topic that you can talk about and explore in more depth. So I looked at my camera roll and realized that most of the photos were of street art, stickers, even like, graffiti pieces, murals, public art. So I thought I'd start a blog about that. And that's how it started, just sort of random happenstance. And I'm lucky that I had this idea when blogging was still relatively new. I paid $25 for the domain, and it just grew and grew and grew. By the end of my first year of running that blog, we had an exhibition at Philadelphia Contemporary with 12 local artists. I had moved from the coffee shop job into marketing because growing this blog very quickly. It looked like I knew what I was doing in marketing. I did not, but I got a job anyway in marketing. And I started growing an Instagram account, which is I think how most people have known me for years. And yeah, over the next couple of years, grew that Instagram account to 150,000 followers. There's now a TikTok, a podcast, and the blog is supported through advertising and curatorial efforts like the curatorial efforts we do with mural arts. So long answer, that's how I got into the art world. Even longer answer, a few years later, I liked curating and more opportunities to curate came to me. So I took them and I curate projects with Mural Arts Philadelphia. Like we do biannual projects called To the Polls, where we build mural walls in Love Park and ask artists to paint murals about why they're excited about voting or why they're interested in voting or why they vote. We do projects every year at the Flower Show, highlighting artists who do really beautiful design work. And yeah, there's lots of projects, always projects. And Front Street Walls is one of the newest ones. Yeah.
Awesome. So where can when can you briefly touched on this, but when can people expect to like really start looking at Front Street Walls?
Yeah, so we're still trying to nail down the date. So they'll be completed sometime in June. But if you follow Streets with an S, DEPT, like short for department, on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, or you go to my website, streetsdept.com, and sign up for my newsletter, you'll get information about when it comes up. And then soon after that, or right around the same time, we'll be creating murals for temporary murals for Wawa Welcome America, which begins on Juneteenth and goes through the July 4th holiday. It's about a 2-week span of stuff. So there's also temporary murals a part of that. And working on 2 big permanent murals, one in West Philly and one in South Philly with 2 incredible local artists that I've kind of teased and talked about, but we'll be talking about much more in the coming months.
Awesome.
Yeah, follow me in any of those places and you'll hear about
it. The mural arts and arts in general has an interesting connection to the current mayoral election, I think, because it's something that we either do or don't get a lot of support for. We do or don't get a lot of support for the arts in general, basically depending on the way that the office of mayor decides to treat arts in Philadelphia, either as a priority or as something tertiary to really the operations of Philadelphia. And I've many times gone on at length on this show and actually, like hosted multiple events having to do with funding the arts in Philadelphia. So I'm sure everybody's sick of hearing me talk about it. But what do you guys think about the arts in Philadelphia? Is my supposition correct that the arts plays an integral role in the things that we see that as negatives here, like gun violence, as in mitigating gun violence, in mitigating violent crime in general, or is it completely unrelated? Is it something that we could do without, that we need to focus on other things?
Well, it's certainly true that whenever there's a budget crunch, which there always is, the arts are one of the first things that are cut because of people's short-sightedness, basically. And also, I'm sure that there are so many different entities that are vying for limited funds. But I mean, the first thing that's obvious to me is that the arts puts people in the streets, and with people on the streets, the city is safer. And that may sound oxymoronic, but it is not. When lots of people, when things are vibrant, when the restaurants are full, when the theaters are full, with lots of people in the streets, the city is a safer place. It's also economically more viable and so forth. So, to me, the kind of work that Conrad is doing, which I would say gets people out into the neighborhoods and beautifying the neighborhoods, and the kind of work that Aaron and I and Fever Dream Rep and a lot of other arts theater groups in the city are trying to do, those kinds of things are, it's beyond important. It is critical to the life of the city. And, you know, if we look at the city and we look at places like the Philadelphia Art Museum and the Barns, as Conrad had mentioned, these are art has been central to Philadelphia since its very inception. And theater has also, there's a wonderful blog on theater history in Philadelphia that you can follow on Facebook or on Instagram. And there's so much rich history of the arts in this city that it's a shame, really, that all of us are, all these groups are competing for very, very limited funds. A few groups have made major success, and congratulations to them. But the more theater groups we have, the more activity we have, the more, like, for example, getting, like, Theater Exile now is located in South Philly, getting theater into South Philly, getting theater up into Fishtown, getting theater out of Center City and the various corners of the city. It will make the city more vital, more economically viable, and safer, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'll add to that too. Like, in addition to, yeah, and there's so many, you'd probably have to get a social scientist on to, like, so take everything, you know. But I think, at least colloquially and different, like, you know, I've been a part of a lot of Knight Foundation projects that talk about different ways cities can improve safety and improve quality of life for people. And certainly, like, yeah, the busier the streets are, generally the safer. That's why there's a lot of cities pushing for, like, 24-hour cities, you know, not closing bars and restaurants at certain times, making sure public transit runs 24/7, because it seems to show that the data shows that when, you know, your streets are lively and restaurants are lively, and maybe you have fewer parking spots and more, like, outdoor restaurants and stuff, like, when there's a sense of liveliness in the street, it is safer. The other thing I'll add too is, like, yeah, like, not only is it that, not only is it about, like, creating entertainment and opportunities for folks to come out of their house and find that third space, because that's another huge part of this, is when we're so isolated and you're only going between your work and your home, you don't have that third space to enjoy life with community. It can be really detrimental. It's also, investing in the arts is investing in jobs. I mean, these are jobs. Jobs in the arts are great jobs for folks. And, you know, Jane Golden was just talking with the city council about the budget for next year, because the way, you know, every organization is different. The way Mural Arts works is whatever funding they get from the city, they basically triple. So they're about 75% private, 70% private, 30% public funding. So, and she was saying that to city council, and I think it was council member Gilmore Richardson who asked about the recidivism rate for their, because Mural Arts has all these departments. They have art ed, they have porch light, they have restorative justice programs. And in the restorative justice program, they work with different guilds every season who are returning citizens and folks who I guess are potentially at risk. And council member Gilmore Richardson asked what the recidivism rate is for that program, and it's less than 8%. So if you're talking about what is another way to, one of the concerns, of course, in the city is crime, less than 8%. One way to, so if you're talking about potentially reduce crime, is what is another way to, folks, right? Jobs, one of the concerns, of course, in the city, and it's less than 8%. So yeah, one way to, so if you're talking about, I'm really interested in reduce crime, what is another way to, definitely seems jobs, one of the concerns, more interested in less than 8%. So yeah, one way to, so if you're talking about, I'm really interested in reduce crime, what is another way to, not only jobs, one of the concerns, so if you're talking about really interesting, another way to not only jobs on the art, so if you're talking about really interesting, another way to not only jobs on the art, so if you're talking about really interesting, another way to not only jobs on the art, so if you're talking about really interesting, another way to not only jobs on the art, so if you're talking about really programming or different things, I bet you kids would use them, but they're not even open past certain times now, let alone the weekends. investing in public pools, investing in our public parks to make sure they're maintained in every neighborhood, right? What is maybe some reason you don't go to your neighborhood public park? Maybe because it's not maintained well. So not only arts, but public space. We need the next mayor to really invest in our public space, because these are all resources that we need as Philadelphians, as community members, as residents of the city.
Yeah, I've been a little concerned about the mayoral race right now because we have had one forum. A lot of these debates are taking place as forums between all the Democratic candidates, and we've had one forum that concentrated on the arts, and nobody really asked any good questions, I don't think. It didn't seem to really get anything accomplished. And unfortunately, these forums have the problem of they're hosting every candidate, and so unless you made them 4 hours long, they tend to only get 2 or 3 minutes to speak on something. That tends to be a little bit difficult to me. I've invited all the candidates on this show to like literally have a free hour to talk about whatever the heck they want to talk about. Um, but we've gotten some pushback to that because I don't know why exactly. Councilmember Green, former Councilmember Green, came on the show, did a fine job, and got his points across. Spoke with nuance on topics that I disagree with him on, and I think that's a valuable opportunity. I again would invite all candidates to come on a show like this. It's not just me out here, doing this kind of work. There's lots of other artists, producing shows and talk shows. There's very famous interviewers from Philadelphia, and pretty much any of us will give you a chance to talk at length about your platform. I think it's valuable, and so I know Conrad. I may be misspeaking, but I think you've been a fan of Councilmember Gim in the past. Um, that she's one of my least favorite candidates right at the moment, just because of this particular topic. I got an kind of nasty gram to my invitation back from her public relations person saying basically we don't have time for that. Um, I, what is like I don't. There's a couple of different ways to see public representation. Your job as a representative in the public view. Also, a couple different ways to see how you should be as a politician. Um, my favorite view of politicians is that they are representative of their constituents. Like you take the time to listen to your constituents, and then you kind of try and distill that down into a position that you can represent. Um, what do you guys think is the most important job of a politician? Mine, obviously, from the thrust of this is openness and accessibility. I mean, that's one viewpoint. What do you guys think is the most important job of a politician, of a candidate? If you're going to be mayor of a city like Philadelphia, what is the one qualification that you would think would be most important for somebody running in 2023?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll go first since you mentioned. Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of candidates that I've liked. I mean, I've tweeted that as well. A couple that I've had on my podcast before, including Helen Gim, and I have landed on Gim. Gim became sort of one of my favorite candidates from the start. I think a number of these candidates would be better than our current mayor, but I think that the way Gim approaches just thinking about some of the larger issues in our city are a much wider view, a much bigger picture, and could create much more transformative change than some of the candidates are, especially if you are paying attention to these forums And the debates that are happening, many are just talking about funding the status quo, quite literally. And I think last night's debate, talking about like the fashion district curfew, is a really good example. All of the candidates were asked their opinion on, should younger Philadelphians be banned from the fashion district because of the actions of a couple the other night, right? Even if it was a couple hundred, I mean, the reports are varied, and then the reports were contradicted the day after. But even if you take the reports at face value, okay, a couple hundred kids, there are thousands and thousands of kids in Philadelphia, teenagers. I grew up in Philly. The gallery was where I had my first job. I worked there for 3 years. The gallery and the Liberty One Place are, in the summer, some of the only cool places to hang out. Literally, that are the movie theaters, and the fashion district, aka the gallery, is what now has the downtown movie theater. So it was surprising for me to see so many of the candidates agree with the ban, some even saying they would bring police officers over there. Whereas Helen Gim's approach was that kids need a place to hang out, and really it's about funding and supporting spaces for these kids. I really like that answer. So what do I think is an important thing for the next mayor? I think the important thing is that the status quo is not working for the city. I think that's pretty obvious. And we need someone who will think outside of that status quo and act on outside of that status quo. And not to make this a Gim thing, but I think that she is the best candidate to do that.
I'm going to recuse myself from naming a candidate because Helen Gibbs a personal friend of mine. So, but to the larger question of what leadership is, I think, James, you were saying listening to your constituents and distilling what your constituents want into a cogent policy, which makes a lot of sense to me. But I'd take it a little further. I think the first thing is listening to your constituents, but the second thing is providing leadership for those constituents, because the constituents are driven by their own personal needs and wants, and appropriately so. But you've got to balance everybody's personal needs and wants into some kind of cogent policy. And to do that, you need research, you need information, and you need leadership skills. You need to be able to talk to people whose needs and wants may be at odds with what's best for the general public. And you need to be able to talk to them and explain to them why you would want policy that went in a different direction, because all the research is indicating differently. If you take the crime issue, for example, okay, every night, it seems on the 6 o'clock news, there's another shooting, right? So, and that shooting seems to always lead off the news. Amazingly, there's no report about 20 people gathering in a church basement to rehearse a play that they're going to present to the public in a month or so, as Aaron and I and our colleagues have been doing for the past 2 months. Where all this vibrant life, or how about kids staying after school to rehearse for the band concert and spending hours in practice to put on a band concert for the school community. So, and this is not to down the news. The news has to do what it has to do, but the perception of safety in the city that comes out of the news is vastly different from my experience of walking and being amongst folks in the city. And of course, if you're at a rehearsal, you walk out on the city streets at 11:30 at night to go home, and I feel safe. And my experience is vastly different from the concept you would get from just watching the news. And a leader has to be able to explain that to people and show people, perhaps in part by being out on those streets and meeting those people and being a physical presence, but also an intellectual presence in providing that leadership. So yes, we have a representative democracy, but those representatives need to lead and not just follow the perceptions of individual constituents.
It's an interesting distinction you make there, and I've had conversations with a lot of current and former council members, and your line there kind of reminds me actually of Councilmember O, who is running as the only Republican in the mayoral race, and popular and also kind of numbers would lead you to believe that he has about 0% chance of winning the mayor's race. However, Councilmember O has said pretty much those exact words to me before, that while, constituents have a viewpoint, they are, sometimes you have to lead the constituents. I don't know. I don't know where I stand there. I kind of agree with you and disagree with you at the same time. Yeah, it's important to make sure that your constituents know why you're representing them in a specific way, but I think it's also important to look at what your constituents are bringing to the table and listen with open ears, I suppose. And since Councilmember Gim is a personal friend of yours, please let her know that I'm not a bad guy. I've never tried to do anything negative to any particular person other than somebody who tried and run me over in the street. So, I would love to have her on the show and give her the hour to speak about her positions and why she might think why she might be the perfect next mayor of Philadelphia. She might not be. I'll let voters decide that, but I'm interested to talk to her.
Can we talk about a quick injustice here as well? Because I hope everyone votes. I hope everyone votes for whatever reason they think, right? Voting's important. But what's really terrible is that we live in a city with the way that we vote in this city for mayor is very silly, in my opinion. So in Chicago, for example, they have runoff elections. So if you don't meet the 50% threshold, there's a runoff, and that's what we just saw. And it allows sort of ideas and people to coalesce around the person who could ultimately win. So in theory, in Philadelphia, because we have so many people running and it seems really divided between who's going to vote for whom and whatever, the next mayor could win with like 12% of the vote, which is bananas considering that in municipal elections, voter turnout already goes down. So I think whoever the next mayor is, whoever the next city council is, we really need to work to figure out a better way to host these elections. And maybe you all agree, but it seems like you shouldn't be able to become mayor with 12% of the vote,
Well, yeah, I don't think anybody is, and so people know what's going on in the background. I'm having a little trouble with.
Yeah, I heard it say recording stop. Should we?
No, we're still broadcasting. It's just that I had to switch. I'm having a little trouble with my camera connection, so folks can see you, but I've had to switch to just a one-up layout of whoever's actually speaking. I'll get it back in a moment. At any rate, I think that that is a known problem, and I agree with you that there's no kind of runoff elections, there's no open primary system, nothing like that. And that becomes problematic in a city like Philadelphia, where it's majority. We're both majority minority, and we're also majority progressive. I believe. I mean, there are folks within the Democratic Party here in Philadelphia, within the system of Democrats, who wouldn't be what I would consider progressive or even liberal. They would be considered Republicans in any other city in the nation, but you wouldn't have Jeff Brown running as a Democrat in any place but Philadelphia or New York, right? I mean, am I wrong there?
No, I think you're probably right.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
Obviously, difficult to get elected in Philadelphia if you're not a Democrat. So,
and I think that is something that we do need to address. I think it does disincentivize and disenfranchise a lot of voters. Me being one of them. I'm a registered independent. I don't vote in party elections. I don't believe in party platforms. I don't like the Democratic platform. I don't like pragmatic solutions. I like extreme solutions. I love progressive solutions. I'm totally I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a liberal. I don't believe in neo-lib stuff. Like, you're not gonna catch me arguing for more cops ever. And that's just who I am. But that means also I'm not going to vote in a primary where my only choices are Hellingham, who, for what it's worth, has said several times, I'm not for, giving more money to the police, but also doesn't seem to have the same solutions that my fellow folks on the progressive side do. Um, you've got every other candidate saying they would fund the police more or give more money in some sort of way to the police. Um, who am I supposed to vote for in this primary? Um, I would vote for probably a Working Families Party candidate or something. I don't know.
Recording in progress.
At any rate, I think that this goes into also the Center City is remarkably safe conversation. There was recently a report done.
Actually, hold on. Can I pause you
Oh,
there too? 'Cause
sure.
I feel like I've worked on a lot of voter outreach stuff, and I feel you there. I feel like that you know, a lot of people don't vote for a lot of reasons. Positive peer pressure is one of the reasons people do vote. So the people around you are voting, you're more likely to vote. If if you grew up in a family that voted, you're more likely to vote. But some of the reasons that people don't vote is they don't feel like they have enough information. That's really a problem of like underfunded local news and local newspapers. So like we're talking a lot about the mayor, but we also have city council we have to vote for. There are so many people running, and who has the time to go learn about 30 plus city council members? And is that information even out there, right? Because we have a pretty underfunded local news ecosystem. But one of the best. So I hear that frustration in your voice about who do I even vote for. I have a friend, Opiola, who said to me a couple of years ago, she's like, it's interesting. She's like, in this country, there is this idea of vote for the lesser of two evils. And she's like, I don't see it that way. I really see it as like vote for your best opponent. And she really puts it in the sense of like, kind of, I think to kind of what Russ was trying to say earlier, which is like, whoever is the mayor has to be mayor for 1.5 million people, right? You're not, unless you are mayor, no one's going to agree with 100% of what you say, right? So who can you vote for that not only aligns most with what maybe you agree with, but someone you think you can win some fights against? If you believe deeply in issue X, Y, and Z, who is someone you think as mayor you could work with or push or protest to get movement in that direction? And that's how I see it as well, right? Like no one's the perfect candidate, but who is your best opponent? So that's whenever I hear conversations like this, I always like to throw that out there because once OPL told that to me, I think that's a constructive way to think about it,
I would agree with you, except for the recent elections have proven that not to kind of pan out. Even if you vote for your best opponent, the problem is that the people who get the most backing, and here I'm going to go back to Gim, the people that get the most backing feel like they don't have to talk to everyone. I've been trying to have a sit-down conversation with Helen Gim since 2012, when I started my production company. I'm ethnically Japanese. I represent the Asian affiliation of her at-large seat. I represent the arts in Philadelphia. I've done a lot of work in this city representing Black and Brown people in the arts, and I cannot get a sit down with Helen Gim. In fact, when I try to get a sit down with Helen Gim, I get the brush off of basically you're not important enough. Is that is that right? Am I not important enough? Probably. I'm probably not important enough. Should somebody who is mayor be able to say that to anybody? I don't think so. I don't think that anybody who says that at any point in their political career should become mayor. I mean, that's, you know, like, that's kind of a strong way to put it, I suppose. But if you can't talk to everybody, then you don't represent everybody. And that's kind of where I find one of the things I find most important about our democracy is its accessibility for most people. So yeah, let's go to Chester. Chester is possibly losing its ability to be a city. I find this interesting because Chester is kind of a precursor of Philadelphia, is kind of an analog for Philadelphia in some ways, and some folks look at Chester as a sister city to Philadelphia and look where it's going and or has gone and predict the future of Philadelphia in that way. It has gone quite a bit further than I think Philadelphia would go. It suffers more extremes than Philadelphia does, and I think that's kind of an interesting problem that the city has, the city of Chester has. But what has happened is basically the city of Chester throughout the 50s, 60s, and 70s had a large manufacturing base. It lost that manufacturing base, lost a lot of its tax base. Property values went down. And the city of Chester now has a lot of debt load in the form of pensions, particularly the police pension is one of its biggest debt loads. The police pension will become unfunded as of the end of 2024 if it is not, if something's not done at this point. So the city itself has been in receivership for 2 years, and the people trying to, in receivership, you try to fix the finances of the organization that's in receivership. And the people that are doing the receivership for the city of Chester have basically been in an adversarial relationship with the city council. So at the moment, they're saying that if the city council of Chester doesn't do something to follow their advice, the city of Chester, they will apply to have the city of Chester lose its status as a city, which would then end the government of Chester and it would be reorganized. This is what happens to cities when they don't have a way of funding things that aren't funded in the immediate nature of collecting taxes. Philadelphia is one of those cities, so it is an interesting analog and or predictor of Philadelphia. If we take on debts that we cannot resolve by collecting more taxes, we would be put into receivership at the moment. One of the interesting things that has come up in the mayoral race is Councilmember Green's Philadelphia Public Bank option, which is kind of off the table now. There is a bill that was passed where Philadelphia should create a public bank, which would allow us to service our own debt by taking out loans and issuing things like bonds without approaching other government organizations, which I'm sure you guys know, we're in a relatively adversarial relationship with the state, and when we approach the state for things like funding, we tend to get denied. So, long story long, what would you guys do to kind of solve, in brief, because it's 11:02, what would you guys say would be a good thing to solve the funding issues that Philadelphia has, so that we don't go down the road of Chester? Anybody have any ideas?
Now you know that silence is indication that the problem is huge. I mean, I think this is not a short answer or even a correct answer to the question, but the truth is that America decided to abandon its cities about 100 years ago, and we're now reaping the results of those kinds of decisions. So the answer is long and hard, and you're right that it needed to start years and years ago, but there's no time like the present since we haven't started. But once the tax base moves out of the city, and basically zoning decisions, not just in Philadelphia or Chester, but in the surrounding areas, impacted all of that, and red line districts, and all the kinds of decisions that were made that affected housing and who lived where and so forth, have basically combined together to destroy what we thought of as a healthy city. The decline of industry, of course, all of these things. So we need an entire reconceptualization of how a city can fund itself. And I think my personal answer to that is everybody within a 75-mile radius of a city benefits from the things that city can provide and should be contributing financially to that city's health.
I agree.
So that may be the closest I have to an actual answer.
I think that's a pretty good actual answer. Penny brings up via chat, many places all over the country use the arts and independent companies with tax help that have revitalized dying places. And I will harp on something that I've harped on many times. Spending in the arts in Philadelphia has a 3,000% ROI. That's return on investment for those who don't speak investment. So when the city spends $1, it gets $3,000 in return in taxable spending in the city. So I find that fascinating. I think that it's a shame that we spend less than 0.2% of our budget on our city's budget on the arts, and that is funding things like Conrad's program. It does go in part to funding other arts organizations, but imagine the arts scene if we had 2% of the budget instead of 0.2% of the budget.
Yeah, literally the funding for Front Street Walls, for example, is city funding. I mean, yeah. And I think the only other thing I would add too is I think the funding question that this is out of my league, but something I think a lot about is it's so disappointing when you think of how public schools are funded. Public schools in theory are meant to be this great leveling of they offer everything to everyone and it kind of levels the playing field. But when they're funded through local taxes, local property taxes, you have public schools that look like mini universities and have every program you could ever imagine in the world and after school stuff and this and everything, and then public schools that have lead and asbestos. So, I think the question you asked is tied to how a lot of these things pan out, and maybe it's disinvestment from cities, as Russ mentioned, or however it is, but I think more support from federal and state governments could potentially be a solution. If high tax dollars are going to leave the city, but still live in this country or still live within a radius of the city, they should still contribute their fair share. And then that money should come back to people. We know how much the federal government spends on all of these federal programs that spend so much money, should come back down to us.
Well, it's a disgrace that public school students within 30 miles of Philadelphia are going to the Taj Mahal of high schools.
Right.
And kids in Philadelphia can't even attend their high school because it's riddled with asbestos.
Right.
So, and of course, collapsing and falling down around them as they walk through the hallway. So it's a national disgrace.
Yeah, and that is the disinvestment, disenfranchisement, removal of. I've talked about that many times on this broadcast. But if you look at the carceral system of the United States, it is designed as a follow-on to Jim Crow, a follow-on to redlining, and it literally removes money and manpower from minority districts of anywhere, literally anywhere. It could be rural, it could be urban, but we have literally designed a carceral system that draws money and manpower out of minority districts and puts it into mostly white districts, and particularly rural white districts through the use of for-profit prison systems. On that lovely note, I'd love to wrap up. I really appreciate you guys joining me this morning. Any last thoughts? We'll start in reverse. Aaron, do you have any last thoughts?
Come see our show. I'm sorry it was quiet for most of this, but I really don't follow city politics, so I really had nothing to contribute. I apologize for that.
No, I think that is, like I said before the show, I think that's also a valid position. You're a regular person and an artist, and you don't follow city politics. How do we speak to that? But yeah, no, dude.
That's a good question. I don't know, because I am very involved in national politics. I keep track of that very much. But local, now, in fairness, I don't live in the city of Philadelphia, so I can't vote for the mayor. So I don't have a dog in that hunt. But yeah, I don't have a solution to that, how to get people interested in local politics, because that is really where the most important stuff happens, or starts anyway.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And Russ, any last thoughts?
Yeah, repeat what Aaron said. Come see our show. We open Saturday night at the Adrian Theater on Sansom Street. feverdreamrep.com to get your tickets, and we would love to see you there. And we would love to see you anywhere on the streets of Philadelphia, folks. Come be out there, contribute to the city. It's a great city.
Penny says via chat, come see us, 8 p.m. curtain, April 22nd. She follows all politics, and she's always in the mood for a lively conversation at the door. And that you guys have pay at the door tickets available. Conrad, any last thoughts?
Yeah, we talked a lot about funding for the arts, but funding for local journalism too. I mean, that's where so many people, I grew up in Fishtown. There was like a neighborhood paper too, and you learn about your city council person or different specific neighborhood issues. So we need funding for local journalism too, because one of the biggest reasons people don't vote is because they feel like they don't have enough information. And I suspect one of the reasons, Aaron, you do pay attention to local or national politics is because you can't get away from it. It's everywhere. And it's so interesting. And it's interesting because it's everywhere. And there's a million ways to engage with that content and those ideas. Whereas there are fewer ways with local issues and local ideas, even though I think, to your point, you are much more affected by who your local government is. Your day-to-day is much more affected by who your local mayor is, city council person, commissioner, than who's president. But my parting ways, I will now forever and always connect baseball with performing arts. And now I want to, Russ, we got to get on a call with the Phillies and just like make some kind of sports theater day. Like maybe there's a theater performance before a game starts or in the 7th inning stretch. There's a way to get people who watch baseball into the arts more. I love that.
Thank you guys, and thank you for joining me this morning. I really appreciate it. You can stick around in the chat. I have a few minutes after this, but if you gotta go, feel free. I'm gonna just outro the show, and then I will be available to chat. And so thank you to you, my audience. I really appreciate you sticking around, watching the show. I know there were a couple of little technical difficulties this morning. But hey, we're a small production company. Conrad's talking about funding local news. We are a news organization. We do report on the news, and we do collect news. So if you have anything that you'd like to see covered, excuse me again, anything that you'd like to see covered, any speeches, things that you want to see broadcast, etc., contact us. Contact us through social media, or contact us through our email address. Our website has a contact form. Contact us. Let us know what you would like to see more of. And if you like what you've seen, please consider subscribing. Patreon.com/LightThiefProductions. We're here every Wednesday. We love to bring you local news and information, and we love to cover the arts that are going on in the city of Philadelphia because, like Russ said, it is important that people know what's going on, whether it's a shooting or people spending a couple hours practicing to bring you a show, and bring you entertainment, and having those things available in the city is just as important as knowing about what happened down the block in a neighborhood that you never go through. So, please join us again next Wednesday. We'll have another guest for you. Let's see. It looks like it will be Robin Rosenberg, Daniel Neer, and Drew Russell Dubouf, Hidden the Musical. And we look forward to seeing you then. Have a great rest of your week, everybody.